Imagine a country building thousands of miles of fences, not to keep people out, but to block pests. Sounds strange, right? Out in the scorching Australian outback, workers stretched endless lines of wire and mesh across dusty, barren land, all to stop an invasion. At first, critics laughed it off as a waste of money, but a decade later, the truth was undeniable. These fences didn't just protect livestock and crops, they sparked one of the most dramatic ecological comebacks in modern history. How did a simple fence change the fate of an entire continent's wildlife? Stick around, because this is the story of how Australia quietly pulled off a global conservation miracle. To understand why Australia built some of the longest fences on Earth, we've got to rewind to 1859. A wealthy settler named Thomas Austin released just 24 European rabbits on his estate, simply so he could hunt them for sport. Big mistake. Within decades, those 24 rabbits multiplied into hundreds of millions. Southern Australia turned out to be a rabbit paradise. Endless grasslands, mild weather, and barely any predators. By the 1890s, the population was so out of control that farmers said entire hills looked alive. Moving waves of rabbits stripping everything in sight. The damage was brutal. Crops were destroyed, the soil eroded, and the economy bled millions of pounds every year, worth hundreds of millions of US dollars today. Governments tried poisons, traps, even mass hunts. Nothing worked. Then came a radical idea. If you can't wipe them out, maybe you can fence them out. In 1901, construction began on the State Barrier Fence of Western Australia. It stretched more than 1,800 kilometers, over 1,100 miles, making it one of the longest unbroken fences in human history. Building it was grueling. Workers dragged rolls of wire through brutal heat and dust storms. Supplies came by camel and horse-drawn wagons. Even after it was built, floods and sand buried sections, forcing constant repairs. The project cost about £80,000, equivalent to more than $10 million today, enough to build several high schools. But against all odds, it worked. The fence slowed the invasion, saved tens of millions in crops, and gave desperate farmers a fighting chance. But rabbits weren't the only threat. Dingoes, Australia's wild dogs, were killing sheep across the outback. By the 1920s, new fences went up, this time aimed at keeping dingoes out. For rural families, these fences weren't symbolic, they were survival. Over time, these barriers evolved beyond farming. They became tools of conservation. The original state barrier fence eventually had to block not just rabbits, but also emus, kangaroos, and wild dogs. And then came the most ambitious project of them all, the legendary Dingo fence. At its peak, the Dingo fence stretched more than 5,600 kilometers, over 3,400 miles. Even today, it still runs for about 3,300 miles. For perspective, that's longer than the U.S. coast-to-coast drive from New York to Los Angeles, and halfway back again. It's even longer than the Great Wall of China's intact sections. From the air, and even from space, the difference is visible. North and west of the fence, dingoes still roam, keeping ecosystems balanced. South and east of the fence, dingoes are nearly gone. Without them, foxes and feral cats exploded, devastating native wildlife. For farmers, the fence was a lifesaver. For biodiversity, it was a disaster. Scientists started calling it the Dingo line. It wasn't just wire, it was the line that split a continent in two. Fast forward to the 2010s, and Australia took fencing to a new level. Cluster fencing. Instead of one giant wall, farmers teamed up, building predator-proof fences around groups of properties, hundreds of miles of them. These projects helped bring sheep farming back in areas where it had nearly collapsed. But fences aren't set and forget. They demand constant human effort. Storms, erosion, even a single break can undo years of protection. Patrol crews, nicknamed fence runners, still drive the length of these fences, tightening wires and repairing damage day after day. Today, Australia's fences stretch so far that if you unraveled them and laid them in a line, they'd circle around 1/8 of Earth's equator. Or, put another way, enough to wrap around the entire continental United States 1.5 times. These barriers aren't just farming tools. They've reshaped ecosystems, rewritten landscapes, and redefined the balance between humans, livestock, and wildlife. So, what do you think? Did Australia's fences save the land or just create new problems? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating deep dives like this one.